Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Twisted Faith. In Hell's Place, the former council estate where people died, went missing, and other weird and twisted things happened every day without a second thought. Nothing was safe, and everything was a weapon. Fate, religion, spirituality, whatever you wanted to call it. It could be a weakness just as much as a strength. The wonderfully rich aromas of freshly fried red meat, crispy garlic, and sweet mint filled my senses as I, William Tyler, sliced into the buttery soft fillet. I smiled in delight. The rich red meat was so soft, so fresh, and still dripped with little droplets of warm blood. It was perfect. The sterile white plate, balanced ever so carefully on my handcrafted bone table, was just sheer perfection. The bone table was filled with little details, little faces, and a few other details that I had carved in over the years. My mother had always said I was gifted, and she couldn't be more correct. The sound of my fork and knife hitting the plate, slicing through the meat, and my moans of pleasure echoed throughout the high-ceilinged chamber. I shivered in delight. The meat was so good. Even after the past few years, I couldn't be happier with the stone chamber. Its massively circular walls were lined with thousands upon thousands of skulls from a wide range of different creatures. They were all perfectly stripped of flesh, preserved, and before each one was placed on the shelf, I muttered a few holy words. Everyone deserved to rest in peace after all. I straightened my blood-red silk robes, triangular hat, and my bare feet stretched out in the cold chamber. I didn't want to get any fresh blood on my robes, because I had patrons coming in a few moments. I had to look my best for the poor souls coming, begging and shouting at me to save their souls and fix their shattered lives. A light cool breeze with hints of burning sage, mint and incense brushed my cheeks from the opened window high in the ceiling. A few of my patrons had asked me why I never closed the window, and I told them a truth. If I shut the window, then it was like I was cut off from the heavens. In reality, I couldn't reach it, the hinges were rusted open and I couldn't be bothered. My patrons were still delighted with the truth I told them, so they didn't care. They still droned on and on about their sad lives. I cried in despair at their stories, and then I made sure they entered paradise so they would no longer be in any pain. I grinned as I took another delicious mouthful of the rich red meat. Its freshness and intense hints of mint, garlic, and blood was like an explosion of flavor on my tongue. It had been ages since I had had a brilliant meal like this. I took another delicious bite of the juicy, succulent meat, and I remembered the first time I tasted meat, and the memories were just as special now as they always had been. My dumb parents thought because my hair was born naturally long, lustrous, and gray that I was special. I laughed at that idea at the time, and I still do. My parents also said the first time I opened my eyes, they gasped in delight as my eyes contained the colors of rainbows and glowed with so-called divine energy. They always believed that I was kind, angelic, and I was a child of the gods, given down to them to save them from their poverty. I had always hated my parents for what they made me do. I wasn't allowed to play, socialize, or have any friends as a child, because they didn't want the stupid neighbor children to get divine insights without paying. Most days I was locked away in my room without a phone, without technology, without even a book. I was forced to communicate with non-existent gods, and whenever my parents asked me for insight, I would lie. Sometimes the advice would work, and I would be allowed outside for a few hours. Sometimes the advice failed, and they wouldn't care. They still loved me in their own special way anyway. A loud bang echoed round the stone chamber. I smiled, and I was so looking forward to my patrons coming down the long spiral staircase. Soon I would have more patrons to hear, more tears to shred, and more bones for my collection. The red juicy meat really was amazing tonight. Though maybe next time, I would add a little more salt, more mint, and some thyme. When I was a teenager, my parents had enough money from my readings, more lying on my part, to build a grand temple in my honor. The entire community donated money, came together, and created the temple for me. I had to admit, it was a beautiful place, and it was so much better than my childhood home. I can still remember the refreshing golden walls, the massive painting of me killing an evil dragon, and a golden throne where I would sit for hours upon hours at a time. My parents didn't allow me to move, to drink, or to eat most of the day. I simply had to listen to patrons tell me their sad stories about how they had lost their homes in a bet. They were working 3 jobs, struggling to pay rent, and they couldn't raise 4 kids on their own. I cried a lot as a teenager. Their stories were powerful, heartbreaking, and I hated seeing my parents alive, collecting money from the less fortunate. The refreshing, succulent fillet was devoured. I dabbed my lips with the sleeve of my blood-red robes and made sure my hat was perfectly straight. The new patrons would soon be here, and I wanted to make sure they saw me as their god, their prophet, and the only man who could save them. The light, refreshing breeze with hints of burning sage, mint, and incense brushed my cheeks. I shivered in delight, and my stomach filled with butterflies. I always loved seeing new patrons. A few years ago, when my parents were still collecting money from the poor, I used to hate seeing patrons. They were so weak, so pathetic, and they complained day in and day out. Yet the thing that I never ever understood about humans was that they never did anything to change their lives. I remember one woman, very attractive in her dirty white t-shirt, ripped jeans, and long black hair that was turning grayer by the day. She wanted me to tell her how to win the lottery so she could be happy, be free, and be in paradise. That's the thing about humans. It doesn't really matter how many centuries go by, how many religions rise and fall, and how much evidence there is that gods, goddesses, and demons do not exist. Humans still believe in the impossible. If humans spent as much time focusing on improving their lives as they do praying to non-existent gods, then maybe the world would be a much kinder place to them. Later that particular night, my parents were crying, begging me to help them because their relationship was in trouble. My mother was crying her eyes out. She loved my father so much, and he was her entire world. My father couldn't have cared less because he knew the truth. I wasn't a prophet. I wasn't an angelic teenager, but I could see the agony in his eyes. He just wanted the pain to stop, just for once. I grabbed the metal chopsticks from tonight's tiny dinner, went over to my parents, and they hugged me. My mother stunk of lilacs like she always did, and my father smelt of sweat and alcohol like he always did. I thrusted the chopsticks into their eyes, and something beautiful happened. They were no longer in pain, agony, and they were finally in paradise. I carefully laid down their bodies on the red carpet, allowed their dark, rich blood to flood the carpet, and I was so happy. I smiled at them. My parents were no longer arguing, no longer in pain, and all their suffering was finally over. The next day my patrons came, told me their sad stories, and I cried again. I shook my head at the memories. Then I simply took them into my stone chamber, killed them, and ate them so they didn't rot and go to waste. "Hello, Great One," a man asked. I folded my arms, bowed to the man coming in with his friends, and I licked my lips. At last, new patrons for me to twist their faith, kill them, and I could eat them over and over so they could escape this foul world and enter paradise. You see, I wasn't a monster, a demon, or an angel. I was a savior.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteley Verse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.